shit. Oh shit.
¿Cómo se abre la puerta? Ay, Dios.
Out too well last time. I'm a bit like this though. If you didn't see what happened last time, I'll annotatify it up there somewhere. 1, 2, 3. I didn't swear. I don't know. I'm tempted to run out the garden. I really can't do anything with that anyway. Okay, but the noise is going on. Alright, that's pretty much garden time. The power of Christ compels ye. I feel like a fool. There we go. Yeah, that's kind of... I'm using my Ouija board to protect myself. The power of Christ compels ye. That's terrible. Garden time. Documentary about black-eyed kids, not the creepy kind, not the victims of playground abuse. I'm going to be doing this Ouija board thing again. I'm not going to be doing it now. I don't even know if I'll do it here. I might do it somewhere else first. I'm going to find a better pointer as well. I've been using these glasses. The idea was that because it's so tall, you'd be able to see, and I wouldn't. Why am I even surprised? Hang on a second. Oh, I haven't got any more of those. This one. There. Hang on a sec. Alright. You see, I got no more of those. I can't see the viewfinder. that was me moving. I'm kind of shaking. If there's anyone there, move the glass. Hang on, let me get a better grip on this. If there's anyone there, move the glass. To yes. That's this one. That was me, by the way. Okay, this is yes, this is no. The alphabet I'm sure you're familiar with if you went to school. Is there anybody there? Move the glass if you're there. Don't move the glass if you like steamy guy-on-guy adult entertainment literature. It never happens when you're expecting it, see? Should have expected that, though. Are you too weak to move the glass? Are you not strong enough to move the glass? Are you afraid to move the glass? Are you afraid of me? Any movement in that glass now is me, because I'm standing, my legs are a bit wobbly to tell you the truth. I'm not, hang on, let me get more comfortable. Oh, screw it, I don't think anything's going to happen. Where's my makeshift? Okay, I heard that, I don't know. That's finished fermenting ages ago, so it wouldn't be that. Sound like that? Ah, okay, never mind.
once again.
Well, I'll call him again. Call him again. Shine the light in there. Patrick? Yeah. Come back. No, not put in. No, wait. Wait, come back with the flashlight. Come back with the flashlight. We don't have a flashlight down here. Wait.
Can I get to that tower from here?
No, I don't think so. Oh, shit.
Is there an alarm in this building?
Descansar. Pero si cabe la clasificación de los fantasmas buenos y malos, este, según Néstor, el administrador de la casa, es uno bueno.
Y esconde las cosas, sí, aquí al personal de vigilancia se le ha ocultado de pronto el chaleco y vuelve y aparece en otra parte.
Y puede ser bueno, pero el temor ha sido inevitable.
Los vigilantes que sintieron la presencia por primera vez de esta persona quisieron retirar de acá pues porque ellos les da miedo.
El fantasma por ahora sigue haciendo de las suyas y aunque muchos no lo han visto, con esta evidencia en video ya es difícil ignorar.
Nicole, I think you should go.
Dude, there's spider webs. You know it.
All right, dude, fuck it. Let's leave.
I'm afraid of spiders.
What? All right, let me get some footing.
Oh shit! Dude! What the fuck? What was it? Get it, go!
Смотри, камера зафиксировала ее, видишь? Конечно. Полтергейст. Фантом. Фантом, маленький человек.
I just let you come through the old person, there'll be a body in there. What a chunk with them too.
East what, so far? East wind?
You get him. You get him. Get him. Jesus, look at that, mate. It's exactly like the one over there, look.
Let's see.
It's right underneath, isn't it? Everything.
Venga, niños, venga. Mi esposo ahorita está grabando porque Andy escuchó ruidos en el cuarto y los niños lo sacaron de la habitación y se fueron corriendo con nosotros. Cuéntales, Andy, lo que oíste.
Mami, ella estaba conmigo.
¿Y qué te pasó?
Oye, ruido.
Oíste ruidos, mi amor, y los levantaron. No sé qué hay en el cuarto. Ahorita vamos a tratar de verlos. Ellos nos despertaron a nosotros. Le dije a mi esposo que agarrara la cámara, porque ya nos han estado espantando varias veces aquí en la casa. Hemos escuchado muchos ruidos. Y ya sabemos que no hay alguien. Vengan acá, vengan acá. Vengan acá porque escuchamos un ruido dentro del cuarto. Y cerró la puerta. ¡Y cerró la puerta!
Ven,
カメラの撮影モードを変更した瞬間、不気味な影が向かってくるのがわかるのだが、お分かりいただけるだろうか。明らかにカメラに近づく影が見える。撮影モードを変更した時に偶然捉えたとでも言うのだろうか。
Yeah, there's something wrong with my leg. Leg? Yeah, like a numb, tingly, numb feeling. Maybe you're sitting on it. So sit on the floor, maybe? No, it's like almost like a cold, frozen type numbness when I was walking through the hallway. It's going away now. That's crazy. Very
この暗視カメラが科学では解明できない現象を捉えた。午前4時48分36秒、突然不気味な白い影が出現。人の形のようにも見える。この後暗視カメラは5秒間にわたって静止。そして動き始めた次の瞬間、 白い影は右上に瞬間移動。塀を乗り越えようとでもしているのか。もう一度よく見ていただき、右上の白い影が動いているのが確認できる。この博物館、古くから幽霊屋敷として知られており、地元ではこの家で非業の死を遂げた娘の亡霊ではないかとささやかれている。ちなみに専門家が調べた結果、暗視カメラに異常はなかったという。
What you doing? That's my sock. Let go my sock. Stop it. You guys wanna go pee-pee? Okay, let's go pee-pee. Come on, guys. Go.
The accounts of a certain particular entity are some of the most disturbing reports one could ever examine. The encounters with this entity have dated back centuries and have been permanently penned into various historical documents. Each culture or area that encountered this being had its own name for it. The operator, the tall man, even master. Today, it is most commonly known as Slender Man. In recent years, it's actually been a phenomenon that's been taking off, and it's been pretty viral. It's even gotten to the point where the legend has its own video game being developed for it. However, its presence in history is certainly undeniable. There are many recorded accounts documenting encounters with this entity. One such disturbing account, stemming from a German journal dating as early as 1702, writes, "My child, my Lars, he is gone, taken from his bed. The only thing that we found was a scrap of black clothing. It feels like cotton, but it is softer, thicker. Lars came into my bedroom yesterday screaming at the top of his lungs that the angel is outside. I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me some nonsense fairy story about the tall one. He said he went into the groves by our village and found one of my cows dead, hanging from a tree. I thought nothing of it at first, but now he is gone. We must find Lars and my family must leave before we are killed. I am sorry, my son. I should have listened. May God forgive me. Despite different cultures attributing different names to this being, all descriptions of it share some very common traits. The Slender Man is described as being a tall man. In many reported experiences, it is said to have the appearance of wearing a black suit and maybe even a tie. Now, there's an important distinction to be drawn here. If this being indeed wears a suit, it can be concluded that it has an awareness and some sort of intelligence. However, if it does not, and it just seems to have the appearance of doing so, then it's hypothesized that it has a natural ability to merge in its surroundings, and in this case that would be with our society, our culture. It may be why this entity has even been evasive for so many centuries, despite an ever-evolving and ever-changing culture. It is also reported as having no eyes, no mouth, no hair, and no distinguishable facial features. Different reports describe it as ranging anywhere between 6 to 15 feet in height. Its behaviors vary from report to report. It has reportedly stalked victims, in some cases for years. Psychological torture is a common tool this being employs, though any definite particular reason as to why it does what it does is anyone's best guess. The only general certainty that can be drawn from this entity's behavior is that it is malevolent. Now, there was actually an interesting list compiled which described potential traits of the Slender Man. This list was compiled after there were a number of burning buildings with unknown causes that had several deaths and a few surviving witnesses. Now, these traits are listed in a sort of chronological order, and this is what that list says. Slender Man will find interest in a victim for reasons unknown. It would then contact the victim, and if it is a child, it'll present itself as friendly. The adults he stalks have a common trait. They have all been through a terrible tragedy in their life, even if the tragedy was made by Slender Man directly. If the victim is an adult, it would stalk the victim for long amounts of time, causing what is known as slender sickness. Now, slender sickness causes massive paranoia, nosebleeds, nightmares, hallucinations appearing only to the sick person, and many other dangerous symptoms. Eventually, and this is where it gets disturbing, eventually it would abduct the victim into whatever nearby forest there may be, where they would be killed. In messy cases, it may remove evidence of its existence by causing fire of their home, place of work, or school. Now, here's one of the more recent findings about Slender Man, and this can get pretty disturbing. Slender Man uses, or is at least thought to use, what are called proxies. Now, these proxies, they are people that behave in really strange ways. Oftentimes it is described as if they behave in ways that make them appear as if they are possessed. It is a kind of psychosis. However, it is unknown whether this psychosis is simply them speaking for themselves, or if it is actually Slender Man pulling the strings. In its most generalized form, you can consider these proxies insane individuals that are apparently under its control or influence. Now, this is because these proxies tend to act based on what this entity might want or need, sort of like servants. Now, the idea is that these people do all the physical interaction for it. Quite significantly here is the idea that they might even destroy or even leave evidence for it. They may even serve as sort of a communication medium, which is really disturbing considering the potential forms of media that they can communicate through. Because this includes creating any sort of electronic media to communicate with whomever they might feel the need to. So it might be possible that there are videos or files out there with communication from it. This idea, it kind of brings you as close as possible to this, as directly as possible as you can get. One final point, you cannot choose to be a proxy. There are reports or accounts in which people have tried where they've wanted to, but it doesn't work that way. In short, it chooses you, you do not choose it. And that, I think, is probably one of the scariest aspects of this entire thing. Apparently there are organizations tracking it, however not much is known about this as one would suspect. In fact, it's even to the point where one of the organizations is literally just called the organization. It's been given aliases such as Optic Nerve, the Unknown Organization, the Bureau, and even the Anti-S-Walker Unit. But all in all, it's just an unnamed organization. One report states that there was an interview with a detective. This detective did not state where he worked from, he only stated that they were based in Washington in the United States. Based on these reports, it is known that the organization pretty much knows about as much as we do when it comes to the Slender Man. However, some extra information includes that they refer to Slender Man as a serial killer whenever they are talking to civilians. They have been researching this entity for many years. They believe he has killed and that he's active throughout the nation, and they do not know how to neutralize him. But beyond that, there is very little known about this organization. There's actually another very interesting foundation that very little is known about. The foundation itself is called SCP. This foundation's initials stand for Secure, Contain, Protect. What they essentially do is they find anomalous objects that are considered not to belong in physical reality or in nature, and they contain them because these objects might be seen as a threat to the stability of our existence. The items they contain are actually referred to as SCPs, and this foundation has actually contained an SCP that is often thought to be the Slender Man because of its nature and the way it works. This SCP is called SCP-582. Its alias is Bundle, and here's a description directly from the SCP archives. SCP-582 is an adaptive, self-propagating meme in the form of an entity most often referred to as blank. It's blanked out. SCP-582's primary ability is passive reality modification. Any fictional account written about SCP-582 will become a factual record of a manifestation of the entity in which SCP-582 will carry out all actions attributed to it in the narrative. These manifestations will happen at whatever time and place is specified. If no specific location or time is given, the manifestation will occur at any opportunity that will meet the narrative's criteria. Now here's what's really interesting about how they are handling this, and for this reason we are here in the video solely referring to this SCP by a factual name in which no narrative can be established. this is how they're handling it. It says, all major internet search engines are to be monitored for any references to SCP-582 under any of its known names. Copies of all media relating to SCP-582 are to be stored in Secure Archive 582. The original sources of these materials and all records regarding the individuals responsible for the creation of such are to be expunged as outlined in Document 582-RP. Now here are the specifics of how this relates to Slender Man. This SCP has been noted to share some abilities as Slender Man. For example, it appears or disappears at any place or at any time. But according to the SCP Foundation, Slender Man does not exist. And that's probably one of the more fascinating reasons. In the past decade, there have been increased reportings of encounters with the Slender Man. There is one interesting connection to note with another reported entity known as the Rake. Now, the Rake gives off what is known as sigma radiation. This is a type of energy signature that was unknown when it was first discovered, and it's still under investigation. This energy signature is not exactly radiation, but there was no other way to name it. It was something that was unknown. It was something new. And so sigma radiation was given as a way to label it and to identify it. This was found in the bloodstream of victims of the Rake. What's interesting here, and its connection to Slender Man, is that Slender Man, in one or two cases, maybe a few, left behind what was a sort of fabric, a piece of cloth. And this cloth gave off that very same energy signature. Now, more information will be compiled for a future summary video of what the Rake is. But because of all of this, it is thought that there is some relation between the Slender Man and the Rake. There have even been mentions of a modern cult who worships the Slender Man, who see him as some sort of holy being and that his actions are a blessing. The Slender Man is certainly one of the most notorious entities in existence. Quite possibly the most disturbing aspect of investigating the Slender Man is the inexact nature of its origin. Its malevolent, mysterious nature is one that garners a lot of deserved attention. This is what we know so far. There is still much to learn. New information is acquired and new hypotheses posed as further investigation is done. However, the costs of the little we find out are great, for there have been a startling number of victims and disappearances in recent times. Yet all information is valuable, for if we do not know or understand how this entity operates, its motives, its purpose, how could we ever hope to escape it should we be misfortunate enough to encounter the Slender Man for ourselves? Last year, I spent 6 months participating in what I was told was a psychological experiment. I found an ad in my local paper looking for imaginative people looking to make good money. And since it was the only ad that week that I was remotely qualified for, I gave them a call and we arranged an interview. They told me that all I would have to do is stay in a room alone with sensors attached to my head to read my brain activity, and while I was there, I would visualize a double of myself. They called it my topa. It seemed easy enough and I agreed to do it as soon as they told me how much I would be paid. And then the next day, I began. They brought me to a simple room and gave me a bed and then attached sensors to my head and hooked them into a little black box on the table beside me. They talked me through the process of visualizing my double again and explained that if I got bored or restless, instead of moving around, I should visualize my double moving around or try to interact with him, and so on. The idea was to keep him with me the entire time I was in the room. Now, I had trouble with it for the first few days. It was more controlled than any sort of daydreaming I'd done before. I'd imagine my double for a few minutes, but then I'd grow distracted. But by the 4th day, I could manage to keep him present for the entire 6 hours. They told me I was doing very well. The second week, they gave me a different room with wall-mounted speakers. They told me they wanted to see if I could still keep the topa with me in spite of distracting stimuli. The music was discordant, ugly, and unsettling, and it made the process a little more difficult, but I managed nonetheless. The next week, they played even more unsettling music, punctuated with shrieks, feedback loops, what sounded like an old-school modem dialing up, and guttural voices speaking some foreign language. I just laughed it off. I was a pro by then. After about a month, I started to get bored. To liven things up, I started to interact with my doppelganger. We would have conversations or play rock, paper, scissors, or I'd even imagine him juggling or breakdancing or whatever caught my fancy. I asked the researchers if my foolishness would adversely affect their study, but they encouraged me. So we played and communicated, and that was fun for a while, and then it got a little strange. I was telling him about my first date one day, and he corrected me. I had said that my date was wearing a yellow top, and he told me it was a green one. Now I thought about it for a second, and realized he was right. It creeped me out, and after my shift that day, I talked to the researchers about it. You're using the thought form to access your subconscious, they explained. You knew on some level that you were wrong, and you subconsciously corrected yourself. Now, what had been creepy was suddenly cool. I was talking to my subconscious. It took some practice, but I found that I could question my topa and access all sorts of memories. I could make it quote whole pages of books I'd read once, years before, or things I was taught and immediately forgot in high school. It was awesome. That was around the time I started calling up my double outside of the research center. Not often at first, but I was so used to imagining him by now that it almost seemed odd not to see him. So whenever I was bored, I'd visualize my double. Eventually, I started doing it almost all the time. It was amusing to take him along like an invisible friend. I imagined him when I was hanging out with friends or visiting my mom, and I even brought him along on a date once. I did not need to speak aloud to him, so I was able to carry out conversations with him and no one was the wiser. Now, I know that sounds strange, but it was fun. Not only was he a walking repository of everything I knew and everything I had forgotten, he also seemed more in touch with me than I did at times. He had an uncanny grasp of the minutiae of body language that I didn't even realize I was picking up on. For example, I had thought the date I brought him along was going badly. but he pointed out how she was laughing a little too hard at my jokes and leaning towards me as I spoke, and a bunch of other subtle clues that I was not consciously picking up on. I listened, and let's just say that that date went very well. By the time I'd been at the research center for 4 months, he was with me constantly. The researchers approached me one day after my shift and asked me if I had stopped visualizing him. I denied it, and they seemed pleased. I silently asked my double if he knew what prompted that, but he just shrugged it off. So did I. I withdrew a little from the world at that point. I was having trouble relating to people. It seemed to me that they were so confused and unsure of themselves, while I had a manifestation of myself to confer with. It made socializing awkward. Nobody else seemed aware of the reasons behind their actions, why some things made them mad and others made them laugh. They did not know what moved them. But I did, or at least I could ask myself and I would get an answer. A friend confronted me one evening. He pounded at the door until I answered it, and came in fuming and swearing up a storm. "You haven't answered when I called you in fucking weeks, you dick," he yelled. "What's your fucking problem?" I was about to apologize to him and probably would have offered to hit the bars with him that night, but my topa grew suddenly furious. "Hit him," it said, and before I knew what I was doing, I had. I heard his nose break. He fell to the floor and came up swinging, and we beat each other up and down my apartment. I was more furious than I have ever been, and I was not merciful. I knocked him to the ground and gave him 2 savage kicks to the ribs, and that was when he fled, hunched over and sobbing. The police were by a few minutes later, but I told them that he had been the instigator, and since he wasn't around to refute me, they let me off with a warning. My topa was grinning the entire time. We spent the night crowing about my victory and sneering over how badly I had beaten my friend. It wasn't until the next morning, when I was checking out my black eye and cut lip in the mirror, that I remembered what had set me off. My double was the one who'd grown furious, not me. I had been feeling guilty and a little ashamed, but he'd goaded me into a vicious fight with a concerned friend. He was present, of course, and knew my thoughts. "You don't need him anymore. You don't need anyone else," he told me, and I felt my skin crawl. I explained all this to the researchers who employed me, but they just laughed it off. "You can't be scared of something that you're imagining," one told me. My double stood beside him and nodded his head, and then smirked at me. I tried to take their words to heart, but over the next few days I found myself growing more and more anxious around my topa, and it seemed that he was changing. He looked taller and more menacing. His eyes twinkled with mischief, and I saw malice in his constant smile. No job was worth losing my mind over, I decided. If he was out of control, I'd put him down. I was so used to him at that point that visualizing him was an automatic process. So I started trying my damnedest to not visualize him. It took a few days, but it started to work somewhat. I could get rid of him for hours at a time, but every time he came back, he seemed worse. His skin seemed ashen, his teeth more pointed. He hissed and gibbered and threatened and swore. The discordant music I'd been listening to for months seemed to accompany him everywhere. Even when I was at home, I'd relax and slip up, no longer concentrating on not seeing him, and there he would be, and that howling noise with him. I was still visiting the research center and spending my 6 hours there. I needed the money, and I thought they were not aware that I was now actively not visualizing my topa. I was wrong. After my shift one day, about 5.5 months in, 2 huge men grabbed and restrained me, and someone in a lab coat jabbed a hypodermic needle into me. I woke up from my stupor, back in the room, strapped into the bed, music blaring, with my doppelganger standing over me cackling. He hardly looked human anymore. His features were twisted, his eyes were sunken in their sockets and filmed over like a corpse's. He was much taller than me, but hunched over. His hands were twisted, and the fingernails were like talons. He was, in short, fucking terrifying. I tried to will him away, but I just could not seem to concentrate. He giggled and tapped the IV in my arm. I thrashed in my restraints as best I could, but I could hardly move at all.
They're pumping you full of good shit, I think. How's mine? All fuzzy?
He leaned closer and closer as he spoke. I gagged. His breath smelled like spoiled meat. I tried to focus, but I could not banish him. The next few weeks were terrible. Every so often, someone in a doctor's coat would come in and inject me with something or force feed me a pill. They kept me dizzy and unfocused, and sometimes left me hallucinating or delusional. My thought form was still present, constantly mocking. He interacted with, or perhaps caused, my delusions. I hallucinated that my mother was there, scolding me, and then he cut her throat and her blood showered me. It was so real that I could taste it. The doctors never spoke to me. I begged at times, screamed, hurled invectives, demanded answers. They never spoke to me. They may have talked to my Topa, my personal monster. I'm not sure. I was so doped and confused that it may have just been more delusion, but I remember them talking with him. I grew convinced that he was the real one, and I was the thought form. He encouraged that line of thought at times, mocked me at others. Another thing that I pray was a delusion. He could touch me. More than that, he could hurt me. He'd poke and prod at me if he felt I was not paying enough attention to him. Once he grabbed my testicles and squeezed until I told him I loved him. Another time, he slashed my forearm with one of his talons. I still have a scar. Most days I can convince myself that I injured myself and just hallucinated that he was responsible. Most days. Then one day, while he was telling me a story about how he was going to gut everyone I loved, starting with my sister, he paused. A querulous look crossed his face, and he reached out and touched my head, like my mother used to when I was feverish. He stayed still for a long moment, and then smiled.
All thoughts are creative,
he told me. Then, he walked out the door. 3 hours later, I was given an injection and passed out. I awoke unrestrained. Shaking, I made my way to the door and found it unlocked. I walked out into the empty hallway and then ran. I stumbled more than once, but I made it down the stairs and out into the lot behind the building. There I collapsed, weeping like a child. I knew I had to keep moving, but I could not manage it. I got home eventually. I don't remember how. I locked the door and shoved the dresser against it, took a long shower, and slept for a day and a half. Nobody came for me in the night, and nobody came the next day or the one after that. It was over. I'd spent a week locked in that room, but it had felt like a century. I'd withdrawn so much from my life beforehand that nobody had even known I was missing. The police didn't find anything. The research center was empty when they searched it. The paper trail fell apart. The names I had given them were aliases. Even the money I'd received was apparently untraceable. I recovered as much as one can. I don't leave the house much, and I have panic attacks when I do. I cry a lot. I don't sleep much, and my nightmares are terrible. It's over, I tell myself. I survived. I use the concentration those bastards taught me to convince myself. It works. Sometimes. Not today, though. 3 days ago, I got a phone call from my mother. There's been a tragedy. My sister's the latest victim in a spree of killings, the police say. The perpetrator mugs his victims and then guts them. The funeral was this afternoon. It was as lovely a service as a funeral can be, I suppose. I was a little distracted, though. All I could hear was music coming from somewhere. Distant, discordant, unsettling stuff. That sounds like feedback and shrieking and a modem dialing up. I hear it still, a little louder now. Not much is known about the rake. This particular entity is rarely encountered. There is very little documentation available for describing it. This video is a compilation of what I was capable of gathering. There are a few well-known accounts regarding the rake. Unfortunately, we do not get to hear much other than these accounts and the little information they can offer us. But it is definitely a starting point for learning about the rake. We need to start somewhere, so here it is. Most of the following research was done in collaboration by a group of individuals with vested interests. These interests are largely based on the fact that they themselves were survivors of direct encounters with the rake. Now here's a compilation of various experiences these survivors found. The first is from a mariner's log, and it is dated 1691. It says, "He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at the request of the rake." Now this implies some sort of communication between the rake and the mariner, and that the rake somehow convinced or maybe even forced the mariner out of wherever he was and to return to England. The next is a journal entry, and it's actually translated from Spanish. It's dated 1880. It says, "I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I see his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand. I will not sleep. His voice. and then the rest of the text was unintelligible. Now, another account they found was actually from a suicide note, which was dated 1964. This note said, "As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him, for once I awoke and felt his presence, and once I awoke and saw his form, and once again I awoke and heard his voice and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might next awake to experience. I cannot ever wake. Goodbye." Now, this note was found in a wooden box. Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose. There was also 1 loose personal letter with no envelope. This letter said, "Dearest Linny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name." Finally, here's the main account from one of the actual survivors, one of the actual researchers who compiled the various experiences. This account is from a direct witness. It is from 2006. 3 years ago, I had just returned from a trip from Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids right to bed and called it a night. At about 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used the moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he got out of bed. When he turned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from the end of the bed so quickly, his knee almost knocked me out of the bed. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for a half second, I was able to see what caused the strange reaction. At the foot of the bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man, or a large hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arm and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, or probably closer to 5. It just seemed like a while. And it was just looking at my husband. The creature then placed its hand on his knee and ran into the hallway, leading to the kids' rooms. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt my children. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over, about 20 feet away. He turned around and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter Clara. The creature ran down the stairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke only once more in her short life. She said, "He is the rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughters to the hospital. They did not survive. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town over who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York who had seen this creature we now refer to as the Rake. It took the four of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believe to be accounts of the Rake. None of them gave any details, history, or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages, and never mentioned it again. A ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only that they were told to leave by the Rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature's visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the Rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night, every night, for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in my bed each day when I woke up. By the end of the 2nd week, I was quite used to the occasional sound of sleeping while blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. Even so, this still took almost an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the Rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is that I've heard it before, and I now believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason, the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thoughts that must have gone through my daughter's head make me very upset. I have not seen the Rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept. I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to see him staring at me. Beyond these accounts and the compilation of these experiences, there is very little information regarding the Rake, except for a few other things. The first is a strange will that was left by a woman named Miss Elizabeth Bellow. Now, she left behind a video, and in her will she had it stated explicitly that her family's inheritance not be released until they saw this video in its entirety. And she also declared that this video become a matter of public record, so the video was publicized online. The video describes her experience with this entity.
He knew the names of my mother and my father. He said that he knew what they dreamed, and that they knew he was called the Rake.
I'm just going to go ahead and put the link to it in the description. I really suggest watching it because it is pretty offsetting. But it has the potential to provide some more information regarding what the Rake is and how it behaves. On a disturbing note, as of October 28th, 2011, which is the time her entire family first viewed this video, 5 of Miss Bellow's relatives have passed away. There is one more potential connection to consider. The Rake may have some sort of connection to the Slender Man, or the Slender Man may have some sort of connection to the Rake. The hypothesis here comes from Sigma radiation. Sigma radiation is a strange energy signature that was found in the bloodstream of victims of the Rake. This very same energy signature was found in a cloth left behind at the scene of one of Slender Man's victims. This energy signature has never in history been encountered before. In fact, radiation might be a misnomer because it isn't radiation as we know it. The people who labeled it simply needed to give this energy signature a label, so they called it Sigma radiation. Beyond this, there is not much known about this relationship or this connection between the Slender Man and the Rake. but it is definitely something that needs to be kept in mind and probably will need further research and investigation. So as you can see, we currently have very little to go on. The connections to Slender Man seem to be the most recent data gathered about the rake. Perhaps further investigation into this relationship will yield useful information. However, anyone doing any such investigation should remain cautious. We do not know exactly how or why these beings behave the way that they do, but if we seek to prevent further dangers and prevent further victimization, then we must push forward in our exploration of this phenomenon. Some of the most mysterious events in history were those that occurred in a place known as Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and areas surrounding it. The reasons why the occurrences were so strange were because the events involved a variety of phenomena during the same time period, not just one thing. From UFOs to Men in Black, and even a being known as the Mothman, it attracted a lot of attention. Now, I have a couple of accounts here that I found compiled on a website. I will have a link to this website and all my other sources in the description. These are the set of first encounters with the Mothman. These encounters occurred in the mid-60s. David and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallett, a pair of young married couples, were traveling together in the Scarberry car one night. As they passed a World War II TNT factory called the West Virginia Ordnance Works, they noticed two red lights by the factory gate of an old generator plant. More closely, their location was about 7 miles north of Point Pleasant, and they were within the boundaries of a 2,500-acre area known as the McClintock Wildlife Station. When the Scarberrys and Mallets spotted the red lights, they stopped the car, then quickly guessed that the lights were the eyes of some large animal. These eyes glowed. Roger Scarberry later reported that the animal was shaped like a man, but bigger, maybe 6.5 or 7 feet tall, with big wings folded across its back. At the time, the 4 individuals in the Scarberry car were all terrified, so the driver drove the vehicle along Route 62 with the strange, oversized but man-like creature in apparent pursuit, while the car sometimes reached speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour. The driver continued to speed along with the winged creature, following closely until the car almost reached the city limits of Point Pleasant. Then, it vanished. The couples were so shaken, they drove immediately to the Madison County Courthouse and reported this terrifying incident to Deputy Millard Halstead. The deputy took the young adults and the story of their experience very seriously, as he had never known any of the individuals to be troublemakers before. Also, The state of fear the two couples exhibited showed Halstead that their fears and shared experience was legitimate, even if the episode could not be reasonably explained at the time. Halstead had the Scarberry and Mallet couples turn their vehicle around and drive back to the site where they first noticed the red eyes. Halstead followed the Scarberry vehicle and nosed around the site of the out-of-service old TNT factory, but found nothing amiss and no trace of the creature. Aside from the widely publicized accounts which circulated quickly about the Scarberry/Mallet Mothman sightings, Newell Partridge had an experience with a set of strange, glowing red lights in his fields near Salem. This event occurred more than 100 miles northward of Point Pleasant. Partridge's dog Bandit disappeared on the night in question and was never seen again. The dog's behavior that night was described as strange. Bandit was acting up. No explanations exist to this day about what happened to Bandit after the shepherd dog dashed out into the field. Weeks later, after the freaky incident, Partridge would tell friends and family quite often that he would not be surprised to someday find the body of Bandit expired somewhere nearby. Partridge attempted some searches for his trusted companion several times in the weeks following the sightings of the lights, but he never found Bandit. No signs of Bandit ever turned up. The sightings of the so-called Mothman were not the only things that happened. Lights had been spotted around the skies of that particular TNT plant, and cars would stall along the road without any explanation. There were even reported cases of poltergeists. Locked doors would open and close sporadically, and there would be strange sounds within houses, as well as voices that were not explainable. But the weirdness of it all did not stop there. There was a reporter named Mary Heyer, who was the Point Pleasant correspondent for the Athens/Ohio newspaper The Messenger. She wrote a lot about these local sightings. After one very strange weekend, she had over 500 phone calls from people who said that they saw strange lights and strange things in the sky. During one night in January 1967, she was working late in her office in the county courthouse, and a man walked in the door. He was described as very short and had strange eyes that were covered with thick glasses. He also had long black hair that was cut squarely like a bowl haircut. Heyer said that he spoke in a low, halty voice, and he asked for directions to Welsh, West Virginia. She thought that he had some sort of speech impediment, and for some reason, he terrified her. She said that he kept getting closer and closer and that his funny eyes were staring almost hypnotically. She was alarmed and scared, so she summoned the newspaper circulation manager to her office, and they spoke to this person together. She said that at one point in the discussion, she answered the telephone when it rang, and she noticed the little man pick up a pen from her desk. He looked at it in amazement as if he had never seen a pen before. Then he grabbed the pen, laughed loudly, and ran out of the building. A couple of weeks went by, and then Heyer was crossing the street near her office when she saw that same man. He appeared surprised when he realized she was watching, and so he turned away and ran for a large black car that suddenly came around the corner. The little man climbed in, and it quickly drove away. Now, all of this seemed to end when at about 5 o'clock on the evening of December 15th, 1967, the 700-foot bridge linking Point Pleasant to Ohio suddenly collapsed while filled with rush hour traffic. Dozens of vehicles fell into the Ohio River and 46 people were killed. Mary Heyer described that during the Christmas week, a short man entered her office. He was dressed in a black suit with a black tie. He was not interested in the bridge disaster, she said, but he wanted to know about the local UFO sightings. Heyer was too busy to speak with him, and she handed him a file of related press clippings instead. He was not interested in them, and he insisted on speaking with her. She finally dismissed him from her office. During that same night, an identically described man visited the home of several witnesses in the area who had reported seeing the lights in the sky. He made all of them very uneasy and uncomfortable. While claiming to be a reporter from Cambridge, Ohio, he inadvertently admitted that he did not know where Columbus, Ohio was, even though the two towns are just a few miles apart. In West Virginia, there is now a plaque adorning the base of a statue. On this plaque, it says, "On a chilly November night in 1966, two young couples drove into the TNT area north of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, when they realized they were not alone. What they saw that night has evolved into one of the great mysteries of all time. Hence, the Mothman legacy began. It has grown into a phenomenon known all over the world by millions of curious people asking questions. What really happened? What did these people see? Has it been seen since? It still sparks the world's curiosity. The mystery behind Point Pleasant, West Virginia's Mothman."
Los habitantes de este lugar nos hicieron llegar. Laura Rivas, tenemos una imagen sorprendente que sale precisamente de este desagüe. Los habitantes de este lugar nos hicieron llegar. Laura Rivas, tenemos una imagen sorprendente que sale precisamente de este desagüe.
上の画面にご注目いただきたい。人気のない廊下に女性が歩いてきて立ち止まると壁の中へと消えていく。壁の向こう側にある部屋は数年前から倉庫として使用されており、出入りする人はめったにいないというのであるが、何か関係があるのだろうか。
Place là, on est au pont de l'au-delà là, franchement quand tu passes ce pont, tu arrives dans le monde des morts. C'est comme ça que ça s'appelle. T'as ralenti un peu là juste pour filmer les fleurs. C'est bizarre hein. Le mec est situé ici. Il accélère parce que j'ai pas été ici. Il y a un truc là-haut. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Putain c'était quoi? C'était un gars en train de pisser non? Ouais non, faut pas abuser. Tu vas se raconter un mec en train de pisser. Pour un truc dans la rue, tu pisses. Non, attends, on sait jamais sur cette route, elle est tellement bizarre, attends. Qu'est-ce qu'il est en train de pisser, c'est tout. Je suis pas un mec en train de pisser. Oh, oh. De quoi, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Il y a un gars là. Non, ouais mais... Attends.
you doing?
Oh, I'm playing hide and seek.
With who?
My friend Mabel.
Oh, okay. Would you want to play hide and seek with me?
Sure.
Okay, now you can play with the real person, so I'm going to actually look for you, and I'm going to do all the counting, okay?
Alright.
Okay, and you're going to be the one hiding.
Alright.
Okay, ready? I'm going to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What? Turn off the lights, cheating. There we go. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Here I go. Better be in a good spot. Where are you? Ariana, could you be in the closet? Gotcha! Ariana? 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 Ah, I see you behind the dresser. Ariana?
You found me.
Oh, what?
Did Mabel tell you where I was?
What?
もう一度。人間とは思えないその動き。歩いているにしては頭が揺れていない。そして忽然と消えてしまう。台湾の監視カメラに映った女性の霊。その女性の霊はインターネットを通じて海を越えて我々に助けを求めたのだろうか。そして今も彼女はインターネットの中をさまよっているのかもしれない。
people think I'm exaggerating or daydreaming or whatever. But I've been attacked by incubots for I don't know how long now. And I'm really getting tired of it. So I'm here to put the camera on overnight to document this thing. I'm not a good sleeper. I have to use this mask to sleep with at night. So it's not going to be pretty, so just be patient. I don't know how long it's going to take. It usually comes around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Nighty night.
Hi everybody, couple of things real quick. Firstly, my buddy Haunted Sunshine Girl is going to be making I think she's making a documentary about black-eyed kids. Not the creepy kind, not the victims of playground abuse. I'm going to be doing this Ouija board thing again. I'm not going to be doing it now. I don't even know if I'll do it here. I might do it somewhere else first. I gotta find a better pointer as well. I've been using these glasses. The idea was that because it's so tall, you'd be able to see, and I wouldn't. Why am I even surprised? Hang on a second. Oh, I haven't got any more of those. This one. There. Hang on a sec. Alright. You see, I've got no more of those. I can't see the viewfinder. That was me moving. I'm kind of shaking. If there's anyone there, move the glass. Oh, let me get a better grip on this. If there's anyone there, move the glass. To yes. That's this one. That was me, by the way. Okay, this is yes, this is no. The alphabet I'm sure you're familiar with if you went to school. Is there anybody there? Move the glass if you're there. Don't move the glass if you like steamy guy-on-guy adult entertainment literature. It never happens when you're expecting it, see? Should have expected that, though. Are you too weak to move the glass? Are you not strong enough to move the glass? Are you afraid to move the glass? Are you afraid of me? Any movement in that glass now is me, because I'm standing, my legs are a bit wobbly to tell you the truth. I'm not, hang on, let me get more comfortable. Oh, screw it, I don't think anything's going to happen. Where's my makeshift? Okay, I heard that, I don't know. That's finished fermenting ages ago, so it wouldn't be that. Sound like that? Ah, okay, never mind. False alarm. Hi guys, happy Halloween. We're gonna try this again. Didn't work out too well last time. I'm a bit like this though. If you didn't see what happened last time, I'll annotatify it up there somewhere. 1, 2, 3. I didn't swear. I don't know. I'm tempted to run out the garden. I really can't do anything with that anyway. The noise is going on. Alright, yeah, that's pretty much garden time. The power of Christ compels ye. I feel like a fool. Oh God. Yeah, that's kind of... I'm using my Ouija board to protect myself. The power of Christ compels ye. That's terrible. Garden time.
Lo que le pusimos de diazepam tumbas a 10 pesos. ¿Cómo? Lo que le pusimos de diazepam tumbas a 10 pesos. No mames.
Alejandra, ¿no estás cansada? ¿De qué te ríes? ¿Y por qué te vas a morir? ¿Que ya no te quieres o qué? Hey. Déjale, toma unos pedos,
No, pero... Ya, Alejandra, ya. Tranquila. Tranquila, ya. Ahí vale.
This is a pretty crazy story here that looks to be checking out as being real, as the woman you see here in the hospital is now in a psychiatric ward as they're trying to figure out exactly what happened to her. This is a Peruvian teenager that was absolutely normal, absolutely fine by all accounts, that was out with some friends over this past weekend, and they downloaded a Ouija board app. Now, this sounds crazy, like, oh, it's fake and this and that. Well, the facts are, she did download this app. They did start messing with it. By the time the girl got home, her parents noticed she was not acting right and looked ill, and then started foaming at the mouth. As they rushed her to the hospital, they were wondering, she got hold of some drugs, something of that nature, and they checked her for all that at the hospital. None of that. But they contacted the friends, like, what did you guys do to her? Like, what were you guys on? And they were like, we did nothing. And they mentioned they did download the Ouija board app, and she was using it, and they were joking about trying to contact spirits. Well, it's no joke at this point, because the hospital staff, all the doctors, nurses, everyone believes fully this woman was possessed by evil spirits. I'm going to leave a link. You can watch the video clip of her in the hospital. You can tell that this is really one of those situations where her voice has changed. She has like super amounts of strength. She starts screaming 666. She's calling out for the devil, and then ask for her mother to take her home. It's really weird, really weird for someone that was absolutely fine. Downloads this Ouija board app. I haven't seen it. I don't know what the name of it is specifically. Things of that nature. And this is the first time I've ever heard of anything happening like this off of an app. Most people think of the Ouija board and say, oh, it's fake anyway. But those that would say, oh, well, spirits are real and they could manipulate the board, well, there's a lot more to this world that meets the eye. Let's just put it that way. And it's all in your mind. If you allow yourself to be weak and open and susceptible, and you're invoking spirits that you do not know what they are, you could be asking for some bad things. Especially if you let one in, which is what looks like happened in this situation. It looks to be truly a real and unique situation here with this whole ordeal, but pretty crazy nonetheless. Like I said, I'm going to leave a link. You guys can watch the footage for yourself, and you can see what I'm talking about. It's been Dabu7.
Okay, here we are in the room. It's dark, but I got the
camera light on so you can see. And there's the girls. And we need something to make the little thing with. Are you a good spirit? What is your name? J. O. H. John. And don't just let your hand rest on it. What do you want? Was it K? K? I? L? Kill. I don't want to do this shit anymore.
Did you guys move it?
No.
Are you sure?
I didn't fucking move it.
I wasn't even touching the finger.
Fuck.
What's that?
Shit. Here, take this.
Don't.
Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God.
You okay?
Jesus, Jesus.
Are you okay? Bethard, oh my God! Bethard! What's wrong? Get rid of it! Bethard! Are you okay? Oh my God, you guys! Bethard! Okay. Like a little bird. Bethard. How do you get rid of it? Don't have saline. Bethard! Are you okay? Come here, guys. Come on. Bethard. Oh my God. Bethard. Do you need water? You want some water? Guys, can you get some water, please? Hey, Bethard, are you okay? כן.
ועכשיו בלי משחקים בפעם האחרונה לנו כבר אין לקרות. יאללה, פעם האחרונה. בסדר. אנחנו רוצים להתחיל.
בואו נתחיל. די, נו.
האם יש איתנו רוח בחדר?
נו, די. רציני עכשיו.
האם יש איתנו רוח בחדר?
רועי, נו! יואו! די, רועי, תדליק את האור, נו! רועי, תדליק אותו! that's because I can move the chair. Okay. Ashley, can you move the chair for us? We'll be out in a minute. Okay.
Okay, we better hurry. Our pancakes ready.
Will you move it for us now before we go get our pancakes?
Oh my gosh, Karen.
Okay.
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 She said she was gonna move it now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Stop moving. Oh my gosh, did it just move?
I don't know.
I think it's moving. Is it, Kara?
I don't know.
Kara?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,